All right, in today's explainer, we are going to tackle our entire relationship with money. Seriously, it's a topic that affects every single one of us, often in ways we don't even realize.
So let me ask you this. Ever feel like you're just bad with money? You know that feeling, right? That kind of frustrating, sinking feeling, maybe even a little bit of shame when you look at your finances and just think, why can't I get this right? If that sounds familiar, you should know it is an incredibly common feeling.
And that feeling, well, it usually has a soundtrack, doesn't it? A little voice in your head that says things like, I'm so irresponsible, or I just can't be trusted with money. Maybe even, why am I like this? If any of those thoughts have crossed your mind, you are absolutely not alone. But here's a pretty radical idea. What if that voice is completely, totally wrong?
Our source material for this explainer offers a really powerful way to reframe this. It suggests you're not bad with money, you're traumatized. Just let that sink in for a second. This isn't about some personal failing, it's about your personal history.
So, let's unpack that bad with money feeling. It's this deep-seated belief that we are somehow fundamentally flawed. But what if that feeling isn't a reflection of your character at all? What if it's actually a symptom of something much, much deeper?
The real culprit, according to our source, actually has a name. And just understanding what it is, that's the first step toward changing your entire financial story. What we're really talking about here is something called money trauma. So what even is that? Well, money trauma is a psychological and emotional response to financial stress. That stress could come from anywhere, really. Maybe from growing up with not enough, or a sudden job loss, or even just soaking up a parent's financial anxiety. But the most crucial part of this whole definition is what it's not. It is not a character flaw. And that insight, right there, can shift the entire conversation you have with yourself, from one of judgment to one of understanding.
And that shift from judgment to understanding, it leads us to the main tool for healing this whole thing. It's all about changing that internal conversation, away from guilt and towards genuine curiosity. This is where the real work begins.
Just think about how different these two mindsets are. The old way, the one fueled by guilt, it leads to these dead ends, right? You tell yourself, I'm a failure, and not just shuts down any possibility of learning or changing. But the new way, the one driven by curiosity, it opens everything up. It asks questions. Why did I do that? What was I feeling in that moment? What need was I trying to meet?
And the source material puts it perfectly. The goal isn't just to, think happy thoughts. It's to replace that crushing guilt with a medical or psychological curiosity. You basically become a detective in your own life, gathering clues about your behavior without any of the judgment.
Okay, so this is all great in theory, but how do we actually put this into practice? How do we start breaking those old patterns? Well, the source calls this the pattern break, and it's a simple but really powerful mental exercise you can do. It's basically a three-step process. First, you just notice the behavior. Maybe it's an impulse purchase, or you find yourself avoiding your bank account again. Second, and this is the hardest part for sure, you have to actively pause that wave of guilt that usually comes crashing down. And finally, you inquire with that gentle curiosity we were just talking about. Interesting. I wonder what that was about. See, this is all about building awareness, not about being perfect overnight.
And what happens is, when you practice this, you start to build an entirely new financial mindset. It becomes one that's rooted in compassion and self-awareness instead of fear and self-criticism.
And this brings us to what might be the most empowering takeaway of all. Your finances are not a report card on your worth. Let me say that again. They are not a measure of your value as a person. They're just data points, reflecting your past experiences. That's it. Nothing more.
So, I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. What if you stopped treating your finances like a problem you have to solve or some big battle you have to win? What if, instead, you started to see them as a story that just needs to be understood? A story that, once you finally understand it, you have all the power you need to rewrite.